This is WABC TV channel 7 New York at 6 o'clock.
This is the news leader. Channel 7
Eyewitness News, 6 p.m. with Bill Beutel. Scott Clark with Sports, Sam Champion with exclusive AccuWeather forecast, and the Eyewitness News team. Now, Eyewitness News. What do you everybody? I'm Bill Beutel, and the news. What's happening on this Wednesday night, November 9th, 1994. Top story at 6. The new Republican mayor in New York is George Elmer Pataki, a lanky, lower legislature from the Hudson Valley who was promised to slash the income taxes and restore the death penalty, was elected 53rd governor of New York yesterday, ended 20 years of Democrat rule in Albany, and toppling Mario M. Cuomo, a legendary figure in state and national politics. Now, the New York races H. Carl McCall becomes the first black New Yorker to win the statewide election at office, defeating Herbert London in the race for the state comptroller. Ms. McCall, a former senator, investment banker, and president of the New York City Board of Education, was appointed comptroller by the legislature last year to fill in a vacancy left by the midterm retirement of Edward V. Wiggins in the race for Attorney General of the Republican Dennis A. Vaco, a former United States attorney from Buffalo, won a narrow victory over the Karen S. Percy, a former family court judge in Brooklyn. Senator Daniel Patrick Monahan, the New York Democrat, easily dispatched his Republican opponent Bernadette Castro to win a fourth term, but he lost the chairmanship to the Finance Committee to Senator Bob Backwood of Oregon when the Senate went Republican. Mr. Pataki, a 49-year-old state senator, won a drawn by a strong turnout in upstate New York counties where Republicans traditionally fare well, by taking the narrow majorities in the suburbans around New York City, I went in Staten Island and fared well in New York County. P. Thomas Colasano, a millionaire businessman from Rochester who was the gubernatorial candidate for the Independence Fusion Party, proved less of a factor than some had anticipated, intimidating anti-Cuomo votes by Mr. Pataki. With 97% of the precincts reported, the results were Pataki 49%, Cuomo 45%, and Colasano 4%. Mr. Pataki's election represents the political triumph by his patron, Senator Alfonso D. Amato, and a potential devastating defeat for Mayor Rudolph W. Giuliani. For the first time in their generation, the Connecticut elected a Republican governor yesterday. John G. Rill and his principal campaign promises to repeal the 3-year-old state income tax for the legacy of Governor Lowell P. Weicker. But because Mr. Rill won only slightly more than a third of the vote in a 5-way race, it was not easy to deliver. Mr. Rowland, 37, defeated Willingness. He carried Democrat and Unis that struck the candidate of Mr. Riker's Connecticut Party, which stands to lose its major party status. With 9% of the 820 precincts reported, the vote was Rowland 36%, Curry 33%, Clark 19%, and Scott 12%, and Zudonic 1%. In New Jersey, Senator Frank R. Lauterbach, a Democrat, won a third term, defeating Assembly Speaker Chuck Hynetan, a Trenton insider who had strong support from Governor Christine Todd Whitman, and Mr. Hynetan tried to portray himself as an outsider during the campaign with 99% of 6,010 districts reported. The vote was Lauterbach 50% to Hynetan 47%. Mr. Hynetan, who's been a legislation champion, Mrs. Whitman's plan to reduce state income tax by 30%, but last night she said it was been very difficult to communicate Hynetan's ability to do in Washington what we were able to accomplish here. Denny's restaurant chain, which for years has been accused of widespread prejudice against black customers, announced yesterday that a black-owned company in Atlanta had agreed to buy and operate as many as 47 Denny's restaurants here in New York and New Jersey. Art McFarland and his report. The arrangement moves Denny's closer to meeting the goal in a chain established with the National Associated Advancement of Colored People that had 53 minority-owned restaurants in 1997. Only a few months ago, none of the more than 15 Denny's restaurants were owned by blacks. One black franchisee was added in June and a second of last week. Under the new agreement, NDI incorporated which owns 23 Blockbuster video stores among other holdings, will buy 17 of the casual sit-down restaurants this year and will have the right to acquire 5 more next year. At the same time, it can build 25 restaurants in New York and New Jersey over the next 5 years. NDI said that it sought the franchise based on economic opportunity, but it was careful to look at the racist segment and developed Denny's. You can always stand on the sidelines and says that the company is racist, said Richard Vinegar of Atlanta, NDI board member. The best thing to do, get involved and become part of the solution. We looked at the allegations and we thought that Denny's was making strides to alleviate their past. The initial group of 17 restaurants are located in upstate New York and in central New Jersey. There are no Denny's restaurants in New York City. Denny's would not divulge in exact locations of the restaurants, most of them in which are along highways, because it said that not yet notify their employees. NDI said the restaurants included 10 in New York and places like Syracuse, Albany, Newburgh, Poughkeepsie, and Fishkill, and 7 in New Jersey and towns like Toms River, Rareton, and Eatontown. The restaurants NDI said are primarily in mixed racial neighborhoods, but some are predominantly black and some predominantly white areas. They are now owned by the corporation and is about 2/3 of the restaurants in the chain. Denny's would not divulge the purchase price, but NDI said it was paying about 5 times the cash flow. In recent years, Denny's, owned by flag star companies of Spartanburg, South Carolina, has been buffeted by allegations that its restaurants discriminate against black customers, turning into similar bigotry. While the company has maintained that the incidents were isolated and not part of Denny's corporate policy, it has taken several expensive steps to recently try to set its far tarnished image. In May, Denny's agreed to pay more than $54 million of settled lawsuits filed by those thousands of black customers who contended that they've been refused service but enforced rate longer than white patrons have been asked to pay in advance. The settlement wasn't the largest under the federal public combinations laws. July 1993, Flagstar, which owns 600 Hardee's restaurants and more than 400 others carrying the name Quincy Family Steakhouse and El Polo Local, reached a fair share agreement with the NAACP and spent $1 billion in jobs and contracts with minorities over 7 years.
We constantly evolve to meet your needs.
The agreement requires the company to hire a significant number of black managers and subcontractors, as well as name a black board member and increase black franchise. It sets a franchise targets of 8 minority-owned restaurants by the end of 1994 and 53 by 1997. Fred Rashid, the National Director of the Economic Development for the NAACP, said he was pleased with yesterday's development as a significant step on their party to chat their goals and commitments by made to us, he said. So far as other areas of the fair share agreement, and he said that the NAACP was happy with the increase in black managers at Flagstar, but he said the jury's still out on the increase in the minority purchasing contracts. NDI is entirely black owned and says that it has revenues of about $25 million, which will be double the addition of the first 17 Denny's restaurants. Its majority investors in Landmark Corporation, a New York black-owned company. Leon Wright, 51 years old, the top producer, is Landmark's principal owner and founded NDI in the late 1980s. James Holden, 37, joined NDI as president and chief executive officer 9 months ago, coming out of the cable service and investment banking field. Charles Davis, who has been in the fast food business, will serve as the chief operating officer at NDI for the Denny's restaurants. NDI said that in 17 restaurants that it designs this year will have the average revenue of some $1.4 million by the $1.2 million for the entire chain. They're not dogs, Mr. Vinegar said. He said that the new Denny's restaurants that NDI might build were expected to include places on Long Island, possibly in New York City. Art McFarlane, Channel 7 Eyewitness News. Back to you, Bill. Okay, thank you, Art. An off-duty New York City police officer and a man who went to him for help saying someone was trying to kill him were wounded yesterday by a gunman in South Bronx, the police said. The officer, Avalo Amari, 34 years old, was shot once in the left knee, was carrying his off-duty 9mm pistol that happened so fast that he didn't have a chance to fire his weapon. So Lieutenant Raymond Fior-Rarias, police spokesman. Officer Amari was reported in a stable condition at Bronx Municipal Hospital Center and was expected to be released last night. The man who sought this help, Pedro Mercado, 22, was shot many times in the upper body and was reported in critical but stable condition at Lincoln Hospital. Mr. Mercado told the officer that his brother had been killed 6 months ago and that the killers were now gunning for him. Said Detective Andrew McInnes, a police spokesman. Someone's trying to kill me, Mr. Mercado reported to have said that they'd been killed my brother and they're trying to kill me, Mr. Mercado said. Spoke frankly with Officer Amari. I come and walked up to them, opened fire and escaped. The incident occurred about 4 p.m. on East 152nd Street and Concord Avenue in the Melrose section in the 40th Precinct. Officer Amari graduated from the Police Academy in August and assigned to the neighboring 41st Precinct. Mr. Mercado will have 5 years probation after having pleaded guilty to criminal possession of a weapon in October 1992, the police said. His brother Neil Sinmon, 28, was shot to death June 4th from by an identified man who walked up to him as he sitting in front of 152 Jackson Avenue near yesterday. Shooting inside the case is unsolved. Lieutenant Ferrari and Officer Amari said Mr. Mercado were not friends but knew each other. They didn't have an adversarial relations, a buddy-buddy relationship, he said, but they saw each other in the neighborhood.
Yeah, but it's not going for any type of play action. Gregory doesn't get sucked inside, does his job forcing the throws and after him.
Woodbury, New Jersey. Communities around New Jersey are shying away from a state plan that would allow the police to shoot deer to control the burning deer population. The deer herd in New Jersey was grown from about 75,000 in 1972 to more than 147,000 in 1991. Deer are found, but all but 123 counties. Hudson and the largely urban areas. Hunting is still used largely in rural and suburban areas to control the deer population, said Bob Erickson. A state wildlife biologist, the state still sells about 100,000 hunting licenses annually for the deer season, which began this year. On October 1st and went about January 20th, the biologist had contended that the sportsmen did the best way to handle it, Mr. Erickson, and the interview this week. They do a very effective job of it. Last year, about 50,000 deer were killed by hunters in New Jersey, compared with it, there's 11,000 in 1973. But in densely populated urban areas, hunting is not an option. A new state plan unveiled this year allows municipalities to authorize local police officers to shoot deer. The plan would allow the municipalities to trap the deer and sell them in consumption and hire an independent consultant for shoot the deer. Police departments have not been enthusiastic about the deer plan, however. The police shouldn't be thinning of any deer herds because we have enough to do with it, said Police Chief Larry Hawkins of North Hanover. I don't have enough manpower to have my men hunt deer. Each year up to 10,004 deer are killed on New Jersey roadways, Mr. Erickson said. Damage caused by the collision between the car and the deer, about $1,000, he said. A subway mugger got more than he bargained for yesterday when he was tackled by a good Samaritan who helped him hold him for the police. The victim, Elaine Cousin of Far Rockaway, Queens, was boarding a C train at Utica Avenue about 8 a.m. when a man knocked off her glasses, snatched her pendant, and ran down the platform, followed by about 50 other customers. I was stunned. I was able to start yelling out. Help came along. Michael Woods, 26, Brooklyn said he heard Mrs. Cousin scream and saw a fellow running away. People on the platform were trying to trip and push him. He had and he was punching and kicking at people. That's when I stepped in front of him. He cuffed me in the mouth. I wrestled him down the ground. I was joined the fray. One held. The suspect's feet then never kicked him with a metal-toed boot. Sergeant George Jimenez of the Transit Police said that when the officers arrived, the suspect was still struggling. The suspect was about 25 years old, refused to give his name to police. Al Lurie, spokesman of the Transit Police, he's a hero. He acted quickly and decisively and thinking of himself to help about someone who needed help. Mr. Woods said, I was just a citizen on the platform. A 14-year-old girl reported that she was raped on Monday in the bathroom at the George Washington High School in Upper Manhattan, the police said yesterday. The girl told the police her attacker wore a ski mask and was hiding in a stall in the bathroom of the school when she entered about 10 a.m. on Monday. A police spokeswoman, Officer Bernard Rainey, said the police did not know whether the attacker was a student in school. Officer Rainey said the victim went home without telling school officials. When the mother came home from work on Monday evening, she took the girl to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. For New Yorkers, they feel that their transit system has gotten better since the early 80s when the fiscal crisis of the previous decade turned the city's bus and subway lines into the shambles, and the left right was plagued by derailments, track fires, and breakdowns. Now, after $12 million that has been spent on the new buses and cars and trucks, Mayor Rudolph W. Giuliani was once again cut back the city's commitment to mass transit to cope with a new fiscal crisis, and transit officials said advocates for writers worry about the cuts could seriously jeopardize an agreement with the state to finance the next set of improvements, which they say unnecessarily bring the city's subway system in the 21st century. During the 1980s, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority concentrated on fixing up the basics of the system, like rebuilding its track network, replacing its old subway cars. But in the last 2 years, the transit officials have turned their attention to refurbishing crumbled stations, replacing an unintelligible public address system, and perhaps most important, installing an automated fare collection system all intended to make New York system more look like the modern transit networks in cities like London and Washington.
So the defense holds.
Transit officials warned that Mr. Giuliani's decision cut $400 million on capital operating subsidies to transit authorities, MTA subways that operate city buses and subways when we rewrote the gains made out of the previous decade. We spent 10 years calling on our way back. We had resulted in clear obvious to the people who use the system, said Jay Walter, the MTA chief financial officer. You only began in the corner and it would be easy to go backward. Just 18 months ago, the state and the city signed an agreement on the need five-year plan to continue modernizing the system. The plan provided $9.6 billion in capital funds, including $7 million in automatic train sales and $750 million for the station rehabilitation. On an agreement, the MTA promised to keep the subway and bus fare at $1.25 until at least mid-1995, when pouring the millions could be referred to the 94 station. Transit officials also promised to finish installation high-tech train sales and establish a free transfers from buses to trains and other special discounted fares deals like unlimited monthly passes. The monthly passes and other fares. Discounts expected to cost $30 million the next year, then only $200 million in 1996. Aaron Trenton, the state legislature, agreed to give MTA $700 million from petroleum taxes, allowing the tourism bridges and tunnels.
My ancestor, Marcel Tolkowski.
Turbines have formed to also help finance the improvements for this part of the city. Assembly agreed to keep this contribution. MTA has been saying that it has been roughly about $200 million in capital funds and $700 million a year in corporate subsidies. Okay. This is a photo of firefighter equipment clogged the streets around 6:59 as suspicious fire broke out in 2 basement trash bins yesterday. Spoke for the evacuation of customers and employees yesterday at the 70-year-old department store in the 5th Avenue. In regional news, in Pastor, New Jersey, a pastor and couple has been indicted on charges of criminal neglect after they failed to get medical treatment for their 18-month-old daughter who had broken her leg at least 2 months earlier. Katrina Jackson and Brian K. Patterson, both 24, were indicted on Monday and charged as second-degree endangering child welfare for ignoring them charged cause of pain. The swollen leg and her lip indicates and says. The authorities said that despite the urging of state child welfare officials, Mr. Jackson refused to speak medical care for her daughter, Brian. Her mouths were something like, "Oh, she's boiled. She just wants attention," said William Grandnizer, senior assistant Passaic County prosecutor who presented the case to grand jury. Patterson Police Detective Robert Vogel said that the 2 weeks Mrs. Jackson had promoted to care working with the state Division of Youth and Family Services that would take the Sparkle to the doctor, but did not. On July 6th, the caseworker took Sparkle to a hospital where doctors discovered that she had a fracture of her right femur. State child is now in foster care with a relative. Mrs. Jackson is still being sought by the police. Mr. Patterson has been in Passaic County Jail on a related charge where his arrested warrants were signed were in custody late Monday on $50,000 in bail.
Never pierce its tongue. The Cree LED bulb.
Fork River, New Jersey. Federal regulators have turned down a proposal to watchdog groups to immediately suspend the operating license of the Oyster Creek nuclear power plant despite the recent discovery of the several trucks in the reactor course route. The petition filed by Oyster Creek Nuclear Watch of Island Heights and the Washington, D.C. based Nuclear Information and Resource Service urged pouring the Oyster Creek out of the commission and the plant is thoroughly inspected. The plant has been cited for more than a month for the repair and the destroy. The company shall operate on the reactor GPU nuclear calibration and power. He hopes that the reactor can be inspected and operated again on November 27th. The two groups petition was rejected by the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Commission in October 27th. Letter from William Russell, Director of Nuclear Reactor Regulation. In the letter, Mr. Russell said that the group's request was denied because GPU Center has been inspected and repaired. The reactor and components will be continuing to re-examine the facility. The reactor, of course, rounded a stainless steel cylindrical shaped shell that it has suspended a channel coolant water to the field caused the welding on a 60-foot tall, 15-foot wide shroud, which was found to have dozens of cracks in it after an inspection ordered by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The plant run by GPU Nuclear is owned by Jersey Cardinal Power and Elect Company, both subsidiaries at General Public Utilities Corporation and Press Company. In Rochester, New York, after a month of testimony, federal prosecutors called their final witnesses today on their trial. 4 men yesterday charged with conspiring to steal $7.4 million from the armored car depot of fingerprint. Expert the Federal Bureau investigation, William Venata testified. He found Charles McCaw makes handprints on the cardboard has been neat for bags of money recovered from a New York apartment last November. On a cross-examination, he agreed that it could have been placed 30 years ago, and I have no idea when the prints were put there. He said to Mr. McCormick, a 30-year-old teacher is on trial. 3 other men for conspiring to possess money from a Brinks robbery here on January 5th, 1993. He said that he leased the apartment to the Reverend Patrick Maloney in July 1993. Father Maloney, 6'1" Irish born priest who operates a Manhattan shelter memory change the scene, going back and forth to the department with Samuel Miller, an legal immigrant from Northern Ireland. In the months before the $2 million was found stashed there, they face up to 10 years in prison convicted, as does Mr. McCormick, a former Brinks guard. Thomas O'Connor, 35, also is charged with taking part in the actual robbery, face up 25 years. Mr. O'Connor's lawyer was expected to open his defense Wednesday. Moving to defend the Israel fight against challenges from Islamic forces, Israel agreed to pick up the pace of the sluggish talks and expand itself beyond the Gaza Strip and the Jericho enclave, including the entire West Bank. 4 civilians died and 6 were wounded in the heaviest artillery bombardment of the Bosnian capital since February. 9 nations and commanders wheeled out retaliation by NATO, but they noted the tensions of Sarajevo seem once again dangerously high. Fight today have the little hope and then curbing and abuse since international agencies have taken up the case of children's cause of whatever precedent in service as guerrilla fighters in Mozambique, in the Sudan, and the Middle East, and other trouble spots. Prime Minister Mark Mitchell and his cabinet took the oath of office in the Haitian capital and pledged to begin working immediately on rebuilding the country devastated by military dictatorship, corruption, and economic sanctions. New federal clean air rules will be forced to change the recipe used for gasoline in most urban areas in the next few weeks. Susan Smith expected to plead she was insane when she drowned her 2 sons when they claimed they were abducted. An alternate jury selection for the O.J. Simpson jury began. The jury and the judge told members of the jury pool that they could not wait to watch some TV and read some newspapers. The Supreme Court questioned the constitution of 2 federal laws. One prohibits civil service non-reams of other bans gun possession near a school. The Federal Aviation Administration said it would consider department and flights and nasty conditions by the aircraft that crashed last week in Indiana. Sam and Valve of preschool for poor children in New York University School to offer free tuition. Okay, AccuWeather forecast, Sam Champion. Take it away, Sam. Alright, thank you, Mr. Beutel. Right now, current conditions at
Clock ticks away, both teams with
6 p.m. report, 64 to LaGuardia, 65 in JFK, 65 in Newark, 61 out in Teterboro, 61 out in White Plains, 61 in Peekskill, 61 out in Bridgeport, 57 in New Haven, and 64 in McCocker. Yeah. Let's take a look at our national forecast. It shows rain and snow, and well as very strong winds buffeted parts of the west coast as yet another portent storm system pushed to shore. Heavy rain fell across northern California with precipitation more than 2 inches fell, and in west slopes in the Sierras. Heavy snow expected about 35 feet with gusts up to 50 miles per hour in the mountains early in the day. Farther north, valley showers and mountain snow prevailed in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Abundant sunshine and seasonable temperatures covered much of the southwest and southern Rockies. Meanwhile, high clouds with streaky skies of Wyoming and eastern Montana. Building high pressure with sport a chilly start to the day over the upper middle west and northern plains, but sunshine helped flip temperatures into the 50s across the quarters. Clouds and showers accompany a frontal system from the western Gulf states to the southern Great Lakes. In the warm air south of the front clusters and thunderstorms developed. A few of these storms came strong across the lower Mississippi and Tennessee valleys beyond front low clouds. Drizzle lingering from eastern Oklahoma to Iowa. As the winds from the northeast ascended slope of rain. Meanwhile, the southeast and the middle United States partly east at both staying warm. Most of the cloud conditions covered the northeast as a cool front slipped south from Canada. A few showers formed in western New York and Pennsylvania. So for tonight, cloudy and cooler, lows in the 40s. Tomorrow, skies will cover partly steady, seasonable cool, highs in the 50s. Friday and Saturday, high pressure will be distributed in eastern Canada, producing a spell of dry weather with mostly sunny days with a temperature a little below normal. For Sunday and Monday, a couple of storms for the Great Lakes will arrive in the region late in the weekend, carrying moderate moist air into the region, including the moisture will join only in clouds. Rain may break out in the middle of next week.
Raymond Taylor, the tackle at the Michigan 39 at 12-yard pickup.
Estimated normal 69%. New York and West Cheshire as well. Level Friday, 73.8. Sunrise tomorrow morning about 6:37 a.m. Moon set 11:10 p.m. rise tomorrow morning. Tomorrow afternoon 12:46 p.m. New moon November 3rd, first quarter November 10th, full moon November 18th, and last quarter November 26th. Saturday rise tomorrow morning about 12:36 a.m.
And Raymond Taylor up front.
Miles rise today 11 to 2 p.m. tonight, sets tomorrow 1 to 9 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Pollution index 29 for Stamford, Connecticut, and it's political spoke is good. Bowdoin. Winds from the west of 20 knots and visibly 5 miles or more, and wave heights 3 feet in the sound, 4 feet in the ocean. Foliage, Massachusetts, the entire state is past peak, and some color remains in southeast. Vermont to the south is well past peak, and same goes for Connecticut, now past peak. New York will remain color in parts of Long Island and metropolitan New York City, and New Jersey well past peak, best color in the southern part of the state, and Pennsylvania, some color in the north, strong colors in the central section, and very good conditions south. And that's going to be it for the weather. Now it is on to the sports here. Here's Scott Clark. Thank you, Mr. Champion. Tonight, the Nets will be at the Meadowlands taking on the Chicago Bulls with no Michael Jordan here.
Desmond Morgan, Jennings dribbling, Josh Furman all there. Now a decision for both.
As
it would be a 48-yarder into the win.
South Bend, Indiana. When I was in high school, run process began and his mind was temporarily removed from here and now in Notre Dame's unexpectedly painful football season in high school. He was the quarterback of the Berg Bulldogs for his significant injury record, set and leader of the team that never earned more than 3 defeats of the season. Was considered the national championship in perfect sets this year. Life might be similar in hindsight, particularly when he recalls the days when having his golden retriever with just about 1-1 would not care when he was going to the college football and did not yet consider what Rams and the Heisman Trophy, and he had not yet been asked about his departure from college to the National Football League, and his collarbone had not yet snapped. Tried the nasty electronic mail and he had not yet started appearing, and problems could be solved more simply when everything was going nuts. Fellows, remember that his life as a high school star, I would get my car and go drive around a half hour, about 45 minutes, and just be alone and ride by people's houses and see what was going on. I like the dog with me. Sometimes I can just go over here. I mean, I have a car and I go to ride, but it's different. I'm still in school. Yeah, it's harder to give me away in front of the things here, because no matter what, you have a test next Tuesday. Just East River, New Jersey. Dallas wide receiver Alvin Harper, who injured his knee against the Giants on Monday night after a freakish end to the first half, had a warn with the Giants. Hey, Shape Johnny May. Harper said of Giants quarterback Tito Wooden, all you got to tell them is the last game of the year, somebody is going to get hurt. First, it doesn't seem that Wooten, a rookie, was intentionally trying to hurt Hopper in a fight-filled finish at halftime of the 38-10 block. Second, Harper is warned that the Cowboys would retaliate when the two teams meet again in the final regular season game like a giant threading into a smash of fleet. Dallas thinking Super Bowl, the only bowl the Giants will do is kind of the 10 pins. Harper's words were falling on deaf ears right now. The Giants lose the 6 straight games, have more pressing concern now about a zillion of them. Those more pressing concerns included injury to Thomas Lewis, the rookie first round draft pick who has sprained left knee and ankle. Giants coach David Reed said Lewis, a receiver who also returns kickoffs, would probably miss at least 2 weeks. The team will need no more. After Magna not to mention tested serious late tonight, Wednesday morning, Lewis was hurt in the second half when he was left with twisted the palate, but was actually hurt after the tackle was made. Keene College must forfeit its 3 games, as Keene College announced today that it has forfeited the first 3 football games that it played in this season. Victories over Western Connecticut, Winter, and Rensselaer, probably because the Cougars and relatively let ineligible athletes play. Kane reported the incident to the NCAA and the New Jersey Athletic Conference both accepted Keene's offer to forfeit the games. As part of the organization that represents reduction in upper management, the Mets announced yesterday that they are promoting Dave Howard to the club's general counsel to the position of vice president for the business affairs. And the new position, Howard will take over the summoning duties formerly handled by both Jack Diller and Ian Lynch, whom have left the Mets for the position. Diller said that the head of the Mets business operation until he left to assume the presidency of the San Antonio Spurs last summer. Lynch, a former assistant and general manager, Joe McLean, was named the new general manager of the Chicago Cubs last month. Speaking on the on first call, Bob Phoenix, when he was attending the league-wide business meetings, had said yesterday that the Mets planned to announce the season ticket and single game ticket price of 1995 sometime next week. Although Howard would not comment on whether the Mets planned to raise ticket prices despite the current baseball strike. He did say that the president would be landing in a friendly approach installed by the club during the 1994 season in Studio.
Senior transfer from Western Illinois.
Winning the Stanley Cup did not make the Rangers popular last season. Documents prepared by Viacom himself for the Madison Square Garden estimated about $7.7 million less. Fought the Rangers for the year ended December 31st, 1994, but the figure includes the revenue of the profits from only in the first 2 playoff series. But later in the same document, the revenue estimates indicate that the 2 subsequent series would be of profit to at least about $3.5 million in the profits, bringing the Rangers' operation loss to $4.2 million for the year. That figure went in the document, a copy which will be maintained by the New York Times, are not expressed in terms of the Rangers season, which over the last 2 years, but in 12-month cycles, and after the 31st end. That or December 31st press operating profits or losses and operation and cash flow, both calculations. The bottom line is calculated by the subtracting expenses from revenues. Document was prepared by Viacom during the summer when it was trying to sell the Garden, which owns both the Knicks, Rangers, as well. As MSG Network, the Garden was eventually bought by ITT and Cablevision late August. That statement that's made total about 1994 revenue about $36.8 million, but that excludes about $2.8 million in ticket sales from later rounds. In 1993, the document says the team recorded an operating loss of $3.75 million in revenue and $3.6 million, including $29.9 million in ticket sales. Dave Chickett, the interim president of Garden, declined to comment. There's a private internal financial matters, he said. The Garden's accountant reduces the amount of the revenue that flows to the Rangers. For example, the Rangers get nothing from concessions and luxury suite rentals, and instead of the money, probably several $1 million goes to the Garden as a parent. The Garden can allocate revenue, however, it chooses. The Garden could potentially have paid more than the cable rights from its answering down with the Rangers in 1993 that the team received $4.4 million. And it's made about $4.6 million, only a small portion of the payments coming in radio rights fees from the WFAN. But when a team and TV network are part of the same family, the corporation can decide how much to allocate, and usually does so on the low side. As a corporate parent, the Garden can choose whatever anything that its teams pay to use arena. The Garden currently charges the team per game a fees of $36,000 rather than $50,000 game day operating expenses. Such expenses may be higher if the Rangers do not play in an arena run by a mutual owner. The financial documents also show that Rangers received $2.2 million in 1993 from the portion of the national TV contracts in the United States with ESPN, and in Canada with Molson. They received spent $1.7 million in 1994 because ESPN's overall payment to the NHL fell from $8.1 million to $11.5 million. The team's payroll was $60.7 million in 1993, and it was estimated at $18.8 million in 1994. South was expected to receive $20 million of that season, which has been delayed by the owners' lack of players. The Rangers received expansion payments of $2.8 million in 1991 and $4.3 million in 1992 and $2.9 million in 1993. The Stanley Cup champions received an annual indication fee from the Devils by having to come into New York territory in 1994. The payment was projected at $804,000, and the team spent $1.3 million on the Hispanic League operation, being in New York, $1.3 million travel, and $70,000 equipment and training costs. And that's me for the Channel 7 Hours News at 6 p.m. I'm Bill Beutel alongside Scott Clark and Sam Chip. Have a good evening. Coming next will be ABC World News Now. Repeated channel. We'll see you at 11 o'clock. Have a good evening.